Eric Schmitt from the great state of Missouri. Senator, thank you for taking time. Senator, there's been a lot of talk about censorship and the censorship industrial complex. When you were Attorney General, you filed the Missouri v. Biden case and you exposed a vast censorship enterprise. Please tell us all about that. I think it's very timely right now.
Yeah, so we filed that lawsuit when I was Attorney General almost 2 years ago now. And what we sought out to prove, which we have, is that two of the more corrupt institutions, big government, big tech, were in cahoots to censor millions of Americans. And so we were able to get discovery early on that showed reams and reams of emails, tens of thousands of pages of emails and text messages, just to show the links that they went to censor people. And there's probably two big buckets, Charlie. First was the Hunter Biden laptop story. That was pre-bunked. The FBI, Elvis Chang was the guy that briefed Silicon Valley over and over, telling them it was a Russian hack and leak operation. And then on COVID, whether it was on the vaccine mandates or the mask mandates or the lab leak theory, government was working hand in hand with big tech to censor Americans. I just think it's incredibly scary. The links that they went to silence Americans. And so that lawsuit was filed. It brought all this to light. Then, of course, Elon Musk thankfully buys Twitter. Then you have the Twitter files, and all this stuff is out in the open. If those two things didn't happen, if we didn't file the lawsuit and he doesn't buy Twitter, this stuff would still be in the shadows and would still be happening. But thankfully, we were able to expose it, and we got to make sure this never happens again.
So I'm sure you've seen bits and pieces of the Mike Benz interview talking about the interconnectedness of the censorship regime. What is your reaction to that, and how should we proceed?
Yeah, I would encourage everybody, if they haven't, Tucker Carlson interviewed Mike Benz, who has really made a career now of exposing sort of this enterprise, this censorship enterprise. It's an hour long, but get some popcorn and some Kleenex maybe for the tears that may come, because it's scary stuff. It's scary stuff. And I would say the last 20 minutes or so, Mike does an incredible job of talking about how these agencies, CISA, for example, which no one's ever heard of, was part of this scheme. But you also had, Jen Psaki, Charlie, I think it's important to point out, was at the podium talking about how we're flagging posts. I mean, they weren't hiding this. You had the Disinformation Governance Board stood up by DHS, Department of Homeland Security. And Mike goes into that of how they didn't want to have the FBI do this. They didn't want to have the CIA do this. So they turned it over to DHS and CISA to essentially try to censor Americans. So it's scary stuff. It's vast. It crosses a number of different agencies. But I think what people need to understand is that they had weaponized these agencies of government to suppress dissent. And in this country, we hold that in the First Amendment to be a really important concept, right? This pressure release valve, people can speak their minds. The government isn't in charge and shouldn't be responsible for what people can see or hear or say. And that's what they want to do, to control the narrative. And you're going to see this play out again over this election, this current election cycle. They're already talking about these threats to democracy that Donald Trump poses. The real threat to democracy is trying to throw your opponents in prison for the rest of their life, censoring Americans. I mean, that's the stuff the Biden administration is actually doing. So they're accusing, of course, Republicans of doing the very things that they do.
Have we seen any evidence that they have suspended these censorship activities? And what was amazing about the Mike Benz interview, we have him coming up next hour, is that this was a national security playbook that was then inverted against the American people. Is this ongoing?
Yeah, so we were able to get an injunction for a while, but they fought that, right? So now the Supreme Court is hearing this case, oral arguments, actually a month from today at the Supreme Court. So people will be able to tune in on that. That case hinges essentially, it's illegal for the government to censor. Okay, it's illegal. We're alleging that they coerced they essentially outsourced that censorship to these big tech giants, some of the biggest companies in the history of the world. So that case, we did a little bit different. We didn't go after the social media companies. We went after the government. And so it's a really, really important case. I think it's the most important free speech case in our nation's history, certainly in a generation, because the virtual town square is every bit of the town square now, where people used to go out, on the courthouse steps and speak their mind. Now people are doing it online. So it's a very important principle. So they want to do this. They're fighting it. They've appealed it. They claim that it's in, whether it's a national security interest or a threat to democracy or their interest in making sure people only hear what they want them to hear, they're in it. I mean, they've appealed. We won at the district court level. They've appealed the Court of Appeals decision all the way to the Supreme Court. So here we are.
Yeah, and that's what's really important is that they thought they could get cute by outsourcing the censorship to third-party groups. And they literally went through, oh, we can't use the CIA, we can't use the FBI, so we're going to use the DHS Disinformation Governance Board and go out to other partner 501c3s. And I think we're still just trying to get an idea of the web. What I believe firmly it had a determinative impact on 2020. My fear is that we have not done enough to fix it coming into this election year. And they're going to have the censorship Leviathan in full force. According to Mike Benz, he says that the two most censored events in history were the 2020 election and COVID, and they were happening simultaneously. And now they have broadened this to threats to democracy. Elon Musk liberating Twitter, or X, has been a massive and positive development in this regard. Are there any action items for the U.S. Senate to work on this? I suppose some sort of oversight, but that seems to be slow moving in the Senate.
Yeah, I've tried to carry that work into the Senate. I just think that the First Amendment is foundational. I mean, it is what it means to be an American, to speak your mind. It doesn't happen in other places of the world because tyrants since the beginning of time have tried to control what people can say and what they can hear, right? We can't let that happen here. America is supposed to be an exception. It's one of the reasons why we believe in American exceptionalism, right? And so I've got a couple of bills in the Senate. One is on the social media side. Look, if you're going to not be a platform and you want to be a publisher and you want to engage in this kind of activity, you lose your Section 230 protections.
Yes.
You're no longer immune from lawsuits. So that's one piece of it. And on the government side, I have a bill that would say, if you're an individual government bureaucrat and you've been involved in this, you individually can be sued. So if Charlie Kirk, for example, were censored or whoever were censored, you can sue an individual government actor, like a Section 1983 claim. That would be, all of a sudden, these bureaucrats start weighing cost benefit for themselves individually. I think that would go a long way in curtailing this. So those are two things, two ideas, certainly open to more, but this Supreme Court ruling will be really important. But I think just exposing this, Charlie, because this would have been on the fringes, labeled a conspiracy theory by so many, it's hard for the media to ignore this. They're a part of it. I mean, you just look at the Hunter Biden laptop story. It was real. The FBI had it in November of 2021. They had it. They knew it was real, yet we're still going to these social media companies saying, get ready. There could be this BS story that's coming out. And then when that happened, the pre-bunking of that, then you saw, the sort of these former national security people, Anthony Blinken being one of them, saying this is ridiculous. They were able to put that off. People didn't see it before the election. So I think we're going to see more of that. But it's important, I think, for us to have structural reform in addition to the oversight and exposing it.
Yeah, Senator, if you could stay right there for another segment, I'd love to explore this. And I just want to caution you and everybody, the table is being set right now for another censorship campaign that will begin in the summer and fall. They have a deeply unpopular president. They have an ascendant, dissident political movement. They're not winning on issues that really matter. They talk about defending democracy, which is their kind of code word for mass censorship. Elon Musk has liberated Twitter and X. I believe that if Twitter remains free, that we have a fighting chance coming into November. I really hope we're prepared for when they turn this machinery back on. They're going to get desperate. And around July and August, if we're able to call out their BS and really make this regime exposed, I think they're going to do 2020 again on steroids.
Are you still interested in a solar-powered generator? Because pay special attention, because I'm going to do something that until
Eating rice before bed, liquefying